Okay, now I am going to solder on the first leg. Oh, don't move on me like that. That's a good joint. The difficult part about soldering on an LED star is that the copper base of the star acts like a heat sink, and it absorbs all the heat of the soldering iron. Sometimes you have to up the heat on your soldering iron. Now, I did leave that leg a little long, but that was purposeful. And I'll show you when it's cleaned up here in a minute. Now I'm soldering the other leg of the bridge on. And it moved on me. Trying to look around this camera is difficult. That might work. Yep, that's a good joint. Alright, so now the last step is going to be soldering this last piece of bridge onto that positive LED, and then we can begin wiring this thing up. And yes, I'm leaving that leg long, but my intention is to cut it off once I'm done soldering. I apologize, it's hard for me to look around this camera. There we go. That's good. So then the final step here is to clip off the excess lead. And I take a paper towel, because the rosin, you know, kind of can make a mess a little bit. But there you go. There's my bridged LED. All the positives are bridged. Now the next step is going to be taking a positive wire, which I gotta find one that's long enough, and just mounting one positive wire to come off the LED. And then I'm gonna mount a negative wire, so the next step is pre-tinting all my negative pads. So let me get this is a deep red white LED. So this is a deep red diode, this is a deep red diode. So this negative is the negative for this diode, this negative is the negative for this diode, this negative is the negative for this diode. So I'm getting ready to, number one, put our positive wire off of our bridges, which feeds, it's the positive feed for all three LEDs, the white, the deep red, and the deep red. And then I'm going to solder my negatives. Now, I intend on using a quad cree on this saber. I'm just trying to show a tricree here. My quad cree that's going into the MPP is going to be deep red, red, white. And I'm doing that so, number one, I can mix colors, change colors, drop out diodes to save energy. So instead of, I'm having a color changing board, but instead of changing colors, I'm actually going to use the color changing features to be able to drop diodes out. I can run all three red diodes, the deep red, red, and flash on clash, or I can just run deep red, or I can just run regular red. That's kind of going to be the plan. Or I can, even when I'm running the deep red, I can mix how much red I want going into the deep red. And doing that, trying to get the saber as bright as possible, without the NeoPixel trend that's going on right now. Someday maybe I'll get into that too. Well, I didn't turn the camera on, but basically I just pre-tinned all the negative pads there, and there's one underneath here. There's the negative pads, they're pre-tinned, and I'm getting ready to solder on my positive wire. Alright, this is my common positive wire, and I think I have it prepped properly. Got too much solder grouped up there. I've definitely done a better job of soldering on an LED, but that's a good, and I soldered it in that direction so it can wrap right down that hole. Now you can also solder these wires in so they run down the center, and you know what? I think that the heatsink I'm using, the wires do go down the center, so I soldered that on wrong. So I'm going to desolder it and run it towards the center. I forgot about that. So let's try this ghetto style with no helping hands. And that looks good. So now I can route that down through the center. And there you go. So you have my bridges, which I'm going to kind of try and clear my bridges away from. Now the thing to be careful of, since I'm using the resistor tail bridges, is to make sure that they're not touching any of the LEDs, and also that when you solder your negative wires on, it's going to be critical you don't have any bare insulation touching those, because for all intents and purposes those are open wires. But it should be fine. So now I'm going to be soldering on all my negative wires. Okay, this is my white negative. Oh, don't do that. I guess I'm cool with that. So now I'm going to route the negative wire down out of the way. So there are my negative white and my main positive are routed down through there. So I have 2 more negatives to go on. See, when you use this method, you're only going to have 4 wires. You're going to have your common positive, and you're going to have a negative on each diode. And if you have 2 of the same color diode, after you resistor them, you can tie them together. In this application, my resistors are going to have to go in the chassis. There's no room for them where these wires are being routed. So that's why I'm not putting resistors on them now. But I will bring some resistors in here in a minute and test this thing and make sure that my bridges are good and that my wiring's good and everything's working. So next I'm going to wire both of my deep red negatives. Alright, so here goes a deep red negative. I don't think I have my iron up hot enough. Well, now don't do that. There we go. I think that's good. Route that wire down through the middle. And you can see that the insulation goes right up to the pad, so I think we're good there. So I have 1 more negative to wire, and that's my deep red, this negative on this deep red. So that's one we'll do next. Alright, we're going to try and do this ghetto style. And I think that's successful there. Let's see here. Give it a tug. Good. You can see how... Oh, I don't like how high that is, though. Let me try and quash that down. I don't like how high that is. That's prettier. Give it a tug test. And then that's prettier, much more low profile. So now we can feed that wire down through the center hole. And again, because the heatsink I'm using has a center hole, it doesn't have the side holes. But there is my red, white, deep red, white tricree wired up with bridges. The 4 wires coming out. I know it's crazy because I used a red for the positive and red for the LEDs, but there is a subtle difference in the color of reds. These are kind of an orangey red, where this one's a different red, and this one has a different insulator, so it's a lot harder. But this is my common positive. These are my 2 deep reds, and this is my white flash on clash negative. So these 2 on the deep reds need resistors, which I'm going to go get some resistors and test my wiring here and make sure that that I wired this thing properly. So I'm going to get some resistors and we'll test it. Okay, I'm getting ready to test my bridge and my wiring. Here goes one deep red. Bada bing. Here goes another deep red. Bada bing. And then my white flash on clash, I don't need to hold the resistor on that. Bada bing. So all 3 of my LEDs work properly. So what I use is, this is a 1.2 ohm 3 watt resistor that I have hooked on my negative lead, and I just use a simple 3-volt battery, and I have alligator clips that I soldered on the wires that I use to test my stuff. So it's just a cheap way to bench test your LEDs. So that LED is wired properly and is ready to be installed. Whether it goes into my MPP or not, I don't know. we'll see if this quad cree works out or not. And if the quad cree doesn't work out, then this tricree that we have wired up today may end up in my MPP. But there it is again, so you can see it. You almost can't even see the bridges anymore. That's a lot neater way of wiring. Leaves a lot less coming out of the LED. And it's done. Sweetness.
Thank you for watching. There's going to be more to come. This saber is going to be freaking awesome. It's off the hook. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe and share all you want, and may the force be with you all.